great content today. Another Thoughts at Scale. This is a weekly series now that I'm doing 30 minutes to try and bring as much value to people in terms of scaling organizations and things like that. And with this session, we're going to be talking about clarifying roles and responsibilities. And so one of the things that you'll see in terms of organizations, just to kind of preface this a little bit, a lot of organizations, as they get big, they naturally, if you look back, they have, a lot of key things in place. So they'll have job descriptions. People know exactly what their roles are. However, as organizations scale, right? So if you're starting from brand new, maybe you had 4 or 5 people and you're growing to, 10, 50, 100. Even anytime that you add another large segment of people. And so, in our space where you might get venture capital investment or anything like that, you may actually find out that the organization, as it goes to scale, you could just sense that people are confused. They don't understand exactly, what it is that they need to focus on and things like that. And so that's what this topic today is going to talk about, is how to bring that clarity back in terms of the organization and the employee engagement and everything else. And so that's the focus of today. And we'll dive deep into, one particular tool, the RACI, to talk a little bit about that as well, just to kind of, again, provide you a little bit more of a solution base to sort of look at these things. And I'll provide you some insights from somebody that's done probably 100 or more RACIs in my life, just personally, directly with teams, setting with them, outlining things. So I'll give you kind of my tips and guidance around using a RACI. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, as well, that will have comments with regards to, where they've seen RACIs really excel, as well as where, sort of to avoid them as well. And so we'll talk about a lot of different, tips and as well as, just covering some of the basics here with regards to roles and responsibilities. And so I wanted to just talk about, just some of the things that may bring you here to this point of focusing in on the organization and roles and responsibilities. So if you see people that are not focused on the right priorities, something is disconnected. You have something inside of your organization, the communication methods, the way that you're talking to your organization about the focus of the organization, what should be a priority inside of the organization, just might be off. Or, people just, oftentimes most people go to work with the idea of, hey, look, I'm going to try my best to make this organization successful. We all want to see, the organization that we're in and the team that we're in win. The last thing most people want is this idea that you're having to scramble at the last minute and firefight and several things that come from a lack of role clarity. In addition to that, some people just might be unclear on the next steps, right? So as we sort of progress from step to step inside of an organization, I've seen this before, essentially where, leaders come together and you talk about, where we're at now and what's coming up next. And it makes for a really informed team in terms of what's coming next and how I can contribute. Right? Mostly what most of us directly want is how I individually can contribute to the success of the organization. And understanding that is absolutely key as well. And so, this idea of having not just being clear in terms of how I contribute, but also in terms of the next thing that we need to do. And again, how I contribute to that is also important as well. If you're brand new here and you're watching this for the first time and you're trying to get an understanding of who exactly is this guy and what does he know about scaling organizations. So first of all, I myself am an entrepreneur and lead a couple different organizations myself. In addition to that, I have 3 decades of experience in scaling organizations organizations. I was the one individual inside of General Electric that oftentimes was called whenever companies were struggling to scale as well. And so those, that gave me a great foundation to build capabilities from as well. In addition to that, I've added change management and Lean Six Sigma as well to my toolkit. And I went and completed a PhD in organizational management and information technology. I oftentimes tell people, heck, if you're going to get a PhD, why not have a minor as well in your PhD? And so mine was information technology. Just to add another tool to my toolkit in terms of being able to help clients, really refine requirements whenever you're implementing those digital tools. And then lastly, I have a history of working with companies from startups to Fortune 500s. I mentioned General Electric a little bit ago. I worked with Becton Dickinson as well. I worked with Roche. In addition to that, I've also worked with numerous startups in and across healthcare and life sciences. And so that's what gives me the base knowledge of being able to, do this with organizations and be able to help them scale. What we're going to cover today is we're going to focus in on three key topics related to scaling an organization. And so we're going to talk about roles and responsibilities. We're going to talk about the undeniable importance of role clarity for achieving organizational success. We're going to talk about the strategies to align your roles with your overarching business objectives. And that word align is really important because having alignment and understanding how individuals directly contribute. So, most organizations will develop a strategy and a vision, and then they stop. And then they go do the work that they're going to do, because strategy and vision was something to check off in the business plan. It was something that a company needed in terms of, being able to submit to a VC or, those sort of things, although they're important, I guess, to be able to, get people to understand for investment and things like that. The real reason why you're doing it is so that your organization really can kind of see where are you aiming. That's the vision. And then the strategy is, okay, so how do we get there? And what obstacles have you looked at along the way, right? So you typically in a strategy, you'll look at competitors and things like that. And so, you're looking at the overall environment in the strategy to be able to tell people, hey, look, we've looked at, all of the competitors. We know what their strengths and weaknesses are. We know what our strengths and weaknesses are. And we are going to aim for this particular location in terms of our strategy. And this is how, in terms of our vision, and this is how we're going to get there in terms of our strategy. And so that alignment is absolutely critical, especially whenever you start adding a significant amount of people to your organization, because their first question, again, is going to be, how does my role help the organization achieve the strategy? And even though they may not outright ask that question, individuals want to know exactly how their work, helps the organization as well. And the last thing that we're going to cover are tools like RACI. We'll talk about RACI, but we'll also talk about a few other things that help organizations as well in terms of making sure that you have employee engagement, because that's what really this is about. It fundamentally is, how do you get people to engage with more directly with, where you are and where specifically you're going. And so those will be things that we're going to cover. The things that we're not going to cover today as well. So we're not going to talk about how to write a job description. I feel like there are a ton of resources, and honestly, there are more qualified people even than me to develop a job description. I've talked about this before in other live sessions, but I wanted to mention it again here, where we should just overall talk about the way that that you build a job description inside of a company that's scaling. I feel like should encompass the things that you overall need that role to do. again, I've talked about people's business plans in previous sessions, but what I'm talking about here is in a business plan, you will oftentimes see organizations say things like, we're going to hire, 2 business development people, and we're going to have 5 project managers, and we're going to have, X amount of individuals working on the actual science in the things that we're doing. And although that is important, when it comes time to hiring those people, here's my my overall outsider's view. You should look at the skill set that you need inside of your organization first, and then say, okay, what job does that most closely align to? But maybe it's a business development person. And at the end of the day, if you need a business development person with some basic skills in project management, I would suggest you build a job description that says that. And that essentially will help to align that person. As your organization grows, maybe those 2 roles split. Maybe that becomes 2 independent roles. But initially, you might need somebody with a little bit of capability in terms of project management and a lot of ability in terms of, being able to actually, do business development, for your organization. And so that's, what I'm saying around that. The other piece that I wanted to touch on here is I'm not going to talk about, constructing a strategy and vision. I was thinking about this coming into this one because to me, constructing a strategy and vision is going to take a lot of time. And again, I'm trying to hold us to 30 minutes. And so, we won't be talking about that today. So we're just going to have to hop into this topic and we'll keep going here. So, let's talk about aligned versus not aligned organizations. So a consulting firm called LSA Global, they found that highly aligned organizations grew their revenue by 58% faster and were 72% more profitable than their unaligned counterparts. I additionally found another statistic by McKinsey. They have an organizational health index that found that misaligned companies generate half the return on invested capital and 18% less in EBITDA as well. And the reason why I wanted to also mention that is that I feel like it's not just the organization themselves that should care about this. Anybody that's investing in an organization, the guidance should be, hey, look, having an aligned organization, an organization that understands where you're going and how their roles contribute to that is absolutely critical. And it's proven in these numbers. As you saw with the LSA Global, their focus was not just one particular industry. They surveyed 400 organizations across like eight different industries. I just read it again on my screen here, 8 different industries. So, again, this is a nice broad look at, how organizations, should be thinking about, achieving that organizational alignment. So let's talk about the importance of role clarity in terms of the individuals as well. So, not having clarity could lead to confusion, which affects decision making. It also could increase errors on behalf of the individuals. And, we certainly don't want our people, working hard to achieve their goals. And then, at the end of the day, they're also struggling to be able to complete things without additional errors. The next one is enhanced productivity. So having clear roles allow the team members also to focus on specific tasks, and it boosts efficiency that way. It reduces conflicts. So, again, as an organization grows, one of the natural things that you see is that, let's say somebody had a role that was combined before, and now all of a sudden it's split. Having that role clarity between the 2 roles is important, because the person that used to do maybe 2 jobs, maybe they had, project management on top of business development, to my earlier example, now all of a sudden they just have business development, and project management goes to somebody else, and there's somebody else in the organization that's doing that. Having that clarity helps them really be able to say, hey, look, these are really my focus items, and I can let, if this were the individual that was doing two things before, I can let those other things, go, and maybe touch base with the individual that's new in the organization every so often, right? And that just gives them a little bit, better capability as well. The next one is communication clarity. This one really touches in on having that direct line of, who do I go touch base with? And it also helps with strategic alignment. So how do I contribute to the strategy of the organization? It helps you prevent errors. I mentioned that earlier. And then lastly, it really helps you with onboarding as well. So when somebody comes into an organization, they're trying to understand a lot about an organization overall in terms of, how they contribute, but they're also trying to understand their job, their role, etc. And this helps with that as well. And, one of the things that I included here on the right-hand side is this picture of the relay race. And I really do think that this helps, from the standpoint as well, in terms of clarifying exactly how the baton is passed. And so that's important as well, as your organization moves forward. So how do we build alignment? Well, it starts with that vision and strategy. I mentioned that earlier, and it really, starts with your vision and strategy. You have to have it to a point where it's clear. And I've talked about this before, but having a strategy that really is unclear, fuzzy, and includes a lot of jargon, it may look good from a marketing perspective, but it really doesn't help people understand, well, what does that really mean? And making sure that you break things down in terms of the language that's in the vision and strategy, and making sure that people can understand it is really helpful in terms of, again, trying to get us down to that key point of building alignment. The company culture and core values. I thought it was funny. I was in a startup. This goes back about 3+ years now. So I was working directly in a startup, and we were in a meeting, and getting ready to finish it. One of the leaders that had been there since the very beginning, he started talking about the culture of the company, and I told him, I said, this is the first time that I've actually heard this from anybody. But I can see these elements. I could see, that they have some of these core elements, still inside of the organization. And he said it was funny to him because the organization had grown to a point where he couldn't directly see these things himself anymore. And he wanted to know from somebody else, whether or not if they saw them. And the fact that I could see them, again, as another leader in the company, at least gave him hope that, their overall culture and core values were holding true inside of the organization. Having that roles and responsibility alignment, clarity is really important across roles and individuals, right? And so whenever you think about, again, as you're onboarding people, there's an opportunity to have people talk to other people in the organization that are central to their success. And so having people, ask key questions about, how does your role actually work? Who do you report to? What sort of, roadblocks have you run into? What are those, core things that you are challenged with on a daily basis is helpful in terms of, establishing this alignment as well, because then each individual hopefully walks away with a better picture of exactly where they play as well as how they contribute. Then from a process, structure and obstacle identity. So, oftentimes we talk about process, in terms of, how things should work in terms of the steps, but many organizations don't step back and say, these are known obstacles that we either accept or we're going to plan around. And so having a good understanding of, what sort of challenges does your organization face is something that is extremely helpful, as well in terms of building that alignment, because then not only do people understand what the steps are going to be in terms of what gets carried out, it also helps people clearly identify what obstacles, are known, and what can they count on their teammates to at least help contribute in terms of, either going through the obstacle and finding a path forward, or going around the obstacle and again, working together as a team for that. Oftentimes as well, this idea of measurement transparency. So alignment comes with some level of responsibility, and that responsibility needs to, at some level, be measured. And having a way to measure, performance. So this could be KPIs or OKRs. It also could be, completion or time to complete things. It also could be, your contribution in terms of sales metrics and things like that. And so whatever sort of measurements that are out there for the individuals and how they're contributing to the end goal of the strategy, and having that transparency and an open discussion about performance is absolutely critical. And then I would also tell people, as well, that, any of these things could be reviewed and adjusted as the organization grows. So a 20-person company oftentimes is drastically different than a 150-person company, and so on, right? So as you start to add large groups of people, all of a sudden things need to become clearer, processes need to become clearer, as does the performance measurement as well. And so, having that clarity is absolutely important for the organization. One of the tools that will help you in terms of really defining the roles that people play inside of the organization is a RACI. And the RACI, is an acronym. It stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So responsible is the person that does the work. It's the individual that really is doing the work. Accountable is the person who has been delegated to, they manage, they oversee, they often sign off on the work of those that are responsible. And then consulted is anybody that's asked for input, and then informed people are kept in the loop. So really a RACI is used for helping you identify either inside of a project, so you could use it, inside of an individual project, or you could use it more broadly inside of the organization. Oftentimes it's easier whenever you have a defined set of work where you could say, here are some of the key steps that are going to be conducted, and here are some of the ways that the roles outline, are outlined for that body of work as well. My advice would be that you use a RACI to clarify the roles and responsibilities, and then put it away. The reason why is because you can use other tools of communication really to talk to your people about roles and responsibilities. And so what I mean by this is, so let's say that you've just completed a RACI and it's inside of the organization. You talked about some of the high level, things that your organization really needs to do, and who's responsible, accountable, consultant, and informed. And as a part of this process, then you complete that body of work. You can use communication methods like newsletters, town halls, going out and talking to people about, how different roles play a key role, and not even mention the RACI. And the reason why is because sometimes to really understand the complexities of the RACI, you actually have to dive in a little bit deeper to understand the overall tool. Now, I've talked about a little bit of the structure of a RACI and what the acronym means. I wanted to just bring up this picture really quickly because this RACI template will be available for anybody that has subscribed essentially to these sessions by going to the scaling method /thoughts at scale. So if you go there and just click the register now button, essentially what I will do is after this session is over, I will send out my notes as well as links to this RACI template. And so you will get a combination of both. I think this is now the second session where I'm starting to lose lose my voice. Excuse me, folks. That's better. So the RACI template, let's just talk about this overall in terms of the way that it works for you. On the far left, you will see key tasks or deliverables. So you're going to outline the key tasks or deliverables on that that vertical axis there. In the very top column section, you're going to outline roles. So in this case, I've given you the example of CEO, VP1, VP2, and you'll see that in the template if you subscribe again, to get these. And then I created just this little video as well to show you they're color coded for a reason, and we'll talk about the reasons in just a second. But so each one, R is red. It doesn't mean anything negative. It just means you really should be paying attention to who is responsible. And second to that, who's accountable. Less important, less, I shouldn't say less important, less high up in the overall hierarchy would be who's consulted and who's informed. Because you need mechanisms for those. You do need to stay tied with those. But the reason why those first two categories are really, the two different colors, I kind of go through a little bit in this slide. So what multiple R's or multiple red ones would indicate to me is that there are too many people that are responsible for things. And then if you go down a layer and you say, okay, so what about accountables? Well, that shows you where possible bottlenecks might be inside the organization. It shows you that, that could be a challenge for you. Third on the list, so the RACI cautions that I have here, third on my list here is that it kind of forces you into this method of siloed thinking. And so I would be careful of that. I would pay attention overall to the skills in the organization, as I said before, with job descriptions and things like that. And so stay focused on, essentially, how do you leverage the skills within your organization? And then you want to make sure that you're not either overcomplicating things and including way too many details or being too ambiguous for the level of detail that you need for the RACI. And this is a direct decision of the individuals that are constructing the RACI. You need to decide at what level you're going to detail things in the RACI. And so keep that in mind. In terms of employee engagement, I give you just a brief list here as well in terms of employee engagement. So, again, we've talked a lot about clarity, but this idea of clarity is just really, making sure that you're clear in terms of clarity of communication of ways that you're telling people how their roles align back to the strategy. Keeping people involved, making sure that you've got skills matched to the roles that you're looking for as well. And just making sure that you're providing regular feedback to people. These are the things that you're doing great at. And then these are the ones that honestly we need to improve on. And that could come also with some professional development as well. I've seen way too many leaders, tell people that they have a deficiency and then it's not followed up with, how do they close it? How do they close that deficiency and support the organization better? I would imagine a lot of people would, really want that as well. Next, in terms of transparency, just making sure that you're transparent, around things, and then celebrating success and making sure that you really stay, aligned with, people from that standpoint, that you're celebrating people whenever they cross major milestones. So I wanted to just wrap up, with this final slide here and just say that roles and responsibility alignment really is a bit of a chicken and an egg. You have to have a vision and strategy at a base level, but you also have to have individual goals and a purpose for people as well. And so you want to continually ask people in terms of, how do they feel that they're contributing to the strategy and vision, and making sure that that's aligned. Once those two things are supported and understood inside the organization, this idea of having teams goals and a team purpose is something that could be constructed, as well. And so you have to have, some of these base level things in place before you start to work on, team goals and how your teams align and support the overall vision of the organization. The final thing that I have here for you is that if you need more support, or you want to go deeper, into any of these topics, I'm happy to, connect with people. I've had a few connections since the last couple of sessions, and I really appreciate, individuals, reaching out and wanting to know more. And, I definitely look forward to helping more organizations in the future. And so with that, unless there are any questions, I will wrap up for the day. Thanks so much.